When I got close to the cart, I could see there was a camera taped to a plate on the cart facing back to us. So I just reached down, like turned my head, like please don't explode, and flipped the camera over so it wasn't facing us. Step back into the landing, call down to the command post. It was just getting set up, and hey, we're going to breach this door. We'll let you know. So we breach the door, have a successful breach. Door opens. We were expecting to be met with gunfire, and we weren't. And we clear out. We clear out the room. We find the suspect on the ground with an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Hello, my name is Andrew Smuskiewicz, and welcome back to the next episode of the Salvation from Destruction podcast. Tonight, I will be speaking with retired Las Vegas Metro Police Captain Joshua Bitsko. Joshua served for 24 years and rose through the ranks from officer to captain, serving in canine operations as a detective sergeant, in tactical leadership roles, and as the commander of the department's Health, Wellness, and Safety Bureau. Joshua also commanded the Convention Center Area Command, the unit responsible for keeping millions of visitors safe on the Las Vegas Strip every year. But on the night of October 1st, 2017, all of that training, experience, and leadership would be tested in a way no officer could fully prepare for. When a gunman opened fire from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel into a crowd of more than 22,000 people at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Joshua was one of the first officers to respond and one of only 3 officers who ultimately breached the shooter's door. In 2018, Joshua was awarded the NAPO Top Cop Award and has received the Medal for Valor twice in his career. Joshua is now a sought-after keynote speaker, a trauma educator, the founder of Bitsko Consulting, and the author of the book called The Courage to Live. Finally, Joshua and his wife Jenna host their own podcast called The Courage to Live podcast. So I'd like to welcome to the show, Josh Bitsko. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
I just want to jump right in because we have a lot to talk about this evening, and I'm excited to have you on. So thanks for coming on. So where did you grow up, and what did your childhood look like?
I was born and raised in Las Vegas. There's not a lot of us locals here in Las Vegas. And, my dad was a cop for 30 years. So I'll tell you, I remember my dad was a academy sergeant, and I was probably like 3 or 4. And I remember running through the academy with his old PR-24, the old, nightsticks.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like,
Now we're dating ourselves.
yeah, I know. hitting things and hitting people. It's all I ever wanted to be, was a cop. So pretty much every, decision I make, I played sports, went to high school, had a pretty normal childhood, but I always knew I wanted to be a cop. It's all I ever wanted to do.
So did you have to test to a lot of places, or did you know that you wanted to be Las Vegas Metro right from the beginning?
I never really decided on where, but what Las Vegas did, which a lot of agencies don't do, is they have what they call a cadet program. So when I was still in high school, I was a senior in high school, I got to test to be a cadet. And what a cadet was here, and they actually just instituted the program. It went away for a long time. At 18 years old, full-time employee, and I took reports, wore a uniform, wasn't commissioned, but it did start my time in the retirement system. And so right at 21, you go directly into the academy. You don't have to test again. And so, I was throwing around, do I want to go to college, get my degree, or do I just want to be a cadet and start that process, which is why I was able to retire at a younger age when I did. And so I decided to do that. And, I was able to be around the department. At the time, I think I was making like, $24,000 a year, which at 18, I was like, holy cow. I was able to buy a house and do all that, dating myself, being able to buy a house at $25,000 a year. But yeah. And so, the downside is I had to go to night school, and it took me, I think I was a sergeant. I think I was like 31 when I graduated college from UNLV. But like I said, the downside was that, because I always wanted to get a degree and go to college, but it did start that process. And, I didn't have to test. I had more seniority than someone of my age, and it really turned out really good for me to do that.
So did your seniority start right when you became a cadet?
Well, I was a civilian, but when I went into the academy, of the 100 people in my academy, we were running big police academies, I was the most senior one because I was a cadet. So my badge number was lower. So I wasn't senior to cops that hired on during that period, but I was the senior person in my academy.
So what year did you get hired on then officially as a sworn officer?
2003. So I hired on in 2000 as a cadet. In 2003, I graduated the academy.
Okay. So then obviously explain to everybody what your progression was through the department.
Yeah, hired on patrol, and it's funny because my dad was a narcotics lieutenant, so I thought that's always what I wanted to do. Like, so I was a Spanish translator. I learned Spanish. I was like, I wanted to be an undercover until I started trying it and doing ride-alongs with our narcotics division, and I couldn't buy dope in a pharmacy. They're like, "What? No." Like I was a terrible UC, and I actually had there was a couple guys in narcotics. My dad had retired by then, but there was a couple guys in narcotics. Like, listen, you can come, you can be a case agent, but UC, it's just not in the cards. You don't have that skill set. And you know, yeah, I remember going back or going, going back. I was in a plainclothes like problem solving unit where it was you weren't buying dope or anything, but you were out like solving crimes, street crimes, and stuff like that. I remember like, what am I going to do with my career? Like, this is all I ever wanted, and it's just, but I didn't want to get somebody hurt. If I'm a poor UC, I think there's a lot of validity in your career as a cop of being honest with yourself,
Mhm.
meaning listen, if all you ever wanted to be is a SWAT guy, but maybe you just don't have that hand-eye coordination or skill set, it doesn't mean you're a bad cop, but maybe detective is for you. Or that's a great thing about, law enforcement. There's so many different, you could be a pilot in the air unit if you're in a bigger city that has one. And I remember I left that plainclothes unit. I was a field training officer, and I was always a good patrol officer. I liked being in uniform. I liked talking to people. I liked stopping people and going out there and getting in foot pursuits and catching bad guys. And I remember I got in a foot pursuit with some kid that was way faster than me, and ended up losing him. And then you stop where you're at because they're probably hiding. Called for canine. Canine got there and they set up a perimeter. And the guy was hiding in a bush 30 yards from me. The canine guy got there. He's like, I said, hey, I know what you guys do. Like, I set up a perimeter. I stopped right here. I saw him right there. We start walking with him, and he found the bad guy hiding in a bush, didn't bite him or anything. And I remember him saying, you should come to canine. You're always getting in foot pursuits. You're always like in the middle of stuff. Like, you're just a good patrol cop. And that's what we need. I'm like, dude, I've never trained a dog. Like, I had a hunting dog that my dad trained growing up, but that's about the extent of it. And he's like, yeah, just come out and do the decoy class and see if you like it. Never even on my radar. And so I went out and did the decoy class. Scary getting bit by one of those dogs for the
Mhm.
first time. Just not a natural getting attacked by a predator, but I fell in love with it. I fell in love even the training side of it and seeing how you can train a dog that doesn't even know their name or how to sit to finding bad guys. And then you get into like doing the SWAT stuff. And the cool thing about canine is you get to do a little bit of everything. Like, so I tested for canine and made it. And we had a fairly large unit compared to a lot. We had like I think at the time 17 handlers, and
Oh,
in Vegas
wow.
you carry two dogs. You have a detector dog, so either a bomb dog or a patrol dog, or a bomb dog or a narcotics dog, and you have a patrol dog. And we don't do the dual purpose here in Vegas. And so I went to canine and had got my first patrol dog, Carl, a German Shepherd. And then I got a bomb dog named Lexus because it's kind of hit or miss. You have to be really kind of be on top of things and be a good handler to have a bomb dog because if you miss dope, you miss dope. You miss a bomb, it's a bad day. And so I always had that route. But then I have my patrol dog. I went to SWAT school, was certified as a SWAT dog handler. So I got to work with our SWAT team. I got to go out, but you have the freedom in patrol. You're just out helping, and that's the main job of a canine guy is you're helping patrol find bad guys. And
Mhm.
got to do that. Then got to work with our bomb squad because I had a bomb dog and our counterterrorism people. So you get to do a little bit of everything. And I just really fell in love with it. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years as a handler and decided I was going to test for sergeant. And I remember I tested, did well. And I remember going like 2 weeks after being a sergeant thinking, what the hell did I do? Like, why did I do this to myself? Now I have a bunch of, baby cops that, I'm responsible for. But then I really enjoyed that first level of supervision. Um, did patrol for a while, went back to like a problem solving unit, like a street crimes team. And I remember everybody was telling you, okay, your career, if you're going to promote, you need to diversify. You need to have administrative, tactical, operational, and investigative is what they said. And So I had the operational for my time in K9. I had, administrative, and okay, well, I guess I have to go to the bureau. So I tested for, our crimes against youth and family because the sex assault lieutenant wanted me there. And that wasn't where the opening was. It was a child abuse. So knew nothing about it. And so I remember I had a new detective come in my office. He's like, "Hey, I'm excited to learn about the job and learn about this." He came like a week after me, and I'm like, "I'm going to be honest with you, Chris. I have no clue what I'm doing, but we'll figure it out together." He always joked about that. He's like, "Honestly, that was the best thing a supervisor ever said to me because you weren't pretending like you knew everything." So I did 2 years of that, and again, I just investigated. We did all child death, all accidental drownings, sleep related deaths like SIDS, and then death by child abuse. So if a parent did abuse a child and they ended up dying, I did that for 2 years, and at about 2 years, I realized, okay, this is just too much. It was never one case that got on me. It was when I'd have like 4 or 5 deaths in a week, and I'm just like, and I had little kids at home. It's like
In a
that.
week, not
Oh yeah,
not in
oh
a
yeah,
year, not in a career. We're talking in a week.
yeah,
That that
yeah.
that's crazy.
Well, yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean, it really takes a toll on you.
yeah.
So after about 2 years, well, I'm gonna test for lieutenant. Like I'm on this track, I'm promoting, and we had an active shooter at a Walmart. Well, it started two suspects went into a CC's Pizza. There were two cops eating lunch. They saw the patrol cars out front, walked up to behind the cops when they were eating, and executed them both. Um, one was on my graveyard squad for, years, Alan Beck. And then the other one, his name was Igor Soldo, who I was friends with. And we actually used to play Xbox together when we were off. But no, I just grabbed my stuff, put it in my car and went, because at the end of the day, I was a cop. I was operational for a long time. And so I ended up going out there, helping how I could. And I remember thinking, I'm not ready to hang it up. Like I don't, after something like that had, that had such an impact on me. And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm not ready to just go be a lieutenant at this point and be an administrator and sit behind a desk. At the same time, there was an opening for K9 sergeant. So I tested, went back there, and I stayed there for 6 years, like just getting to be operational, getting to, work a dog again. I ended up running our training program and also develop as a supervisor because I was still, I was young on the department. I was a 28-year-old sergeant. That would have put me at like, 31, 32 as a lieutenant.
Mhm.
Like, I needed a little bit more life experience before I keep going promoting. And I look back at some of the best times of my career being a canine sergeant. And that's when the mass shooting happened and a couple other things. But, ultimately that's when I had Loki, my police dog. And yeah, then after that, I promoted to lieutenant, had a couple different jobs, internal affairs, which I didn't choose. And then ultimately promoted to captain, was captain over the Las Vegas Strip, which that was a wild ride because felt like I was working for 24 hours a day because you have all the daytime captain stuff you have to do, but then all the stuff happens at night. So you're out there dealing with all these events and then ultimately because of all the things that I had experienced and been through both in my personal life and on the job, the sheriff wanted me to help build a health and wellness bureau for the agency. So he like calls me. He's like, "Hey, I want to put you over and build this health and wellness." I'm like, "Why me?" And he's like, "Well, you've been through so much and you handled it
Yeah.
well." I'm like, "Oh, no offense, you don't know how I handled it."
Right. Yeah.
And that's the crux of the book that I wrote, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But
Absolutely.
yeah, and then I retired in the beginning of 24. The last call I took, I was the incident commander over a mass shooting at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Um, put in my papers right after that and started this company where I go around and try and put a not a positive spin, but for me, not just I'm able to go tell my story and teach my class where I've worked with psychologists and police researchers to develop actual tools for people to make decisions under stress, whether they're feeling fear, anxiety, tactical paralysis, but also to help thrive after those traumatic incidents. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but
Yeah.
I have some experiences where I can ground in those classes. And what it did for me is also help me take those negative experiences that I've been through and give them a little more purpose. Like, sorry, a little more purpose, a
Yeah.
little more meaning to it.
I read your book and you hit it right on the head. And that book was extremely powerful. And we'll touch on that in a little while. And it's not just for first responders, police officers. It could pertain to anybody and in any life situation. It was really good. It was really powerful, and it really hit home for me for sure.
Thank you for saying
So
that. Like I said, I put a lot into it, and that means a lot.
yeah, absolutely. But the one thing I definitely wanted to talk about too, and I know it was very important in your book, and I'm a dog lover. My wife's a dog lover. You know, we had a Dutch Shepherd, and now we have a half Malinois, and
Mm.
we call her a half calf because half caffeinated because the other half is Doberman, and she's completely wild. But I wanted to talk about your dog Loki because I know how important Loki was to you, and it was very apparent in your book and on your podcast, which is a phenomenal podcast, by the way, too. But if
Thank you.
you could just talk about Loki a little bit, like where did you get him, and just how he worked with you in some cases you guys worked together.
Yeah, so it's funny. I got Loki when I went back as a sergeant, and so I was still in abuse neglect, and but I knew I was going to K9. I was transferring, I think, in a week or two after that. But because I was in the section before, I was coming back as a supervisor. I knew they were going dog shopping for me, and so I went with them. In Southern California, the owner of the kennels, Reaver. I'm trying to remember the name of the kennel. It'll come to me probably a couple hours later. But we go and we're choosing dogs, and there's a whole selection process. They bring they these most of these kennels get their dogs from overseas. They bring them here. They call a bunch of agencies at the same time. It's like selection day. They bring out dogs that they think fit for you, and so I'm there, but the trainers, we have an in-house training program, and we have some of the best trainers in the world in Las Vegas Metro, our K9 section. And so they're doing the dog selection, and I'm just observing at this point. Later, when I was, running our training program, I was more involved. I was decoying for them. I was selecting dogs, working them, and all that. But here, I wasn't even in the section, wasn't back in the section yet. And but I was still going to be the sergeant. So they brought out this Dutch Shepherd named his name was Yari, and they bring him out, and he is, big. He was young. He was like a year and a half, so he's still very spry, very green. Tested him, and he was just like a rocket. Like, this dog was strong. And I looked over the lieutenant, like, okay, that's my dog. Like, I'm picking that one. I called dibs. And so we chose all the dogs. And then the owner of the kennel was like, hey, I have this dog that, he's a retread. He came from another agency where he failed out. He'd been to two agencies, one in Marysville, California, and one in San Diego. And, he's 5, so way old for a dog to bring back because you're not going to get a ton of years from him. But the Reaver's like, he's a really good dog, just give him a chance. And brought him out. He's biting at the kennel hand. He's skinny. He's missing half his tail because he chewed it off. We could tell that's what happened. He's just and well, as soon as he came out, I never the time like, we got to put that dog back. That dog has too much trauma, too much baggage. And I'm like, don't even test him because he's going to test really well. I can tell he has all the drive in the world. So they test him, and of course he tested real hot. And like, just take him back and like play with him and see if you like him. If not, you can return him. Um, but the reality is a 5.5-year-old dog, 5-year-old dog, not a lot of people are going to want. And there's a good chance he was going to either hopefully end up somebody's pet, or if he bit the wrong person, end up getting put down. So come back, we go through our 12-week training program. Yari's just doing great through training. So is Loki. And we had another handler there, a guy that was wanting to come to K9 that was putting him through training, working him. We got him, TDY. And we got to the part where you start training them to bite real people. Like, you take away the equipment. The equipment's all a game. All dogs are trained the same way. The bite suit and the sleeve, it's all a game from puppy. But we, as a police department, need to transition them. Okay, but you're looking for the human. And when we get to that spot, Yari just had zero interest. He was so
Really?
green, so young. And, I was like, oh, it's a really flip of the coin whether he would even bite on the street. Then I look over at Loki and all his freaking drama. And he loved to bite the leash, and he needed a strong handler. And I was like, gosh, dang it, here we go. I said, okay, we'll take Yari back. I had one of my handlers drive him back up to California, return Yari. I'm sure he'd be, with a little time and age, he might be okay. And I ended up taking Loki, begrudgingly. We had our DVs the first couple of weeks we were working together, and he turned into just a great dog. Like, I mean, he needed somebody that wasn't afraid of him. I think I was his first very experienced handler that he had. And, someone that could correct him in the right way, but also someone to let him be a dog. Like, I ended up introducing him to my family. Like, he loved my kids, which he had never, I mean, he just lived in a kennel because he bit handlers. So they were like afraid of him. And, I started in muzzle, but my son was like 3 at the time. He loved my son, never knocked him over, never hurt him. I saw him relax. He always had drama. He always was like a lot of dog, but watched him relax. And then, we even working in the first couple weeks, first couple months, he's like, he would bite the leash on stuff. He, nip me once in a while, not ever out of anger. It was more, I'm so excited. This is amazing. Dad, do you see this? And I mean, and we had a we had a prowler call, a hot prowl, and the 2 officers get there and they go to through the house to the slider to call someone heard somebody in their backyard. When they opened the slider, the suspect opened fire on the cops with a SKS, like a AK-47 style
Yeah.
rifle, hitting the officer in the hip, splitting his femur. That officer goes down. The other officer returns fire. There's actually 2 suspects back there. One jumped the wall. The other one hid behind some bushes when he was getting shot at. So we get there. I get there with Loki. I have a couple other handlers, but we let their dogs run the truck. They were just backing me up, and I'm like, "Hey, come out. I'm gonna send a dog." And he's just, "I'm over here." I'm like, I know you're over there. We couldn't see him. Stand up, put your hands up, and walk to us, or you're gonna get bit. I'm over here. So I sent Loki. Loki ends up diving over a bush, biting him in the back of the head, and pulling him off of the SKS. And I'm like, okay.
Ow.
So we end up,
Ow.
yeah. So I end up getting him off the bike. We get the guy in handcuffs. He was laying on top of SKS. He had a shotgun slung, and I remember like I'm walking back to the truck with Loki, and he's just looking at me prancing, so happy. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna keep you.
That's great.
So, yeah, I mean, I have this podcast could just be stories about Loki. To be honest, I have so many about him, and just to see his progression from this dog that was likely on the path to getting put down to being, best police dog I ever worked, and literally, saved me a couple times. But
Go ahead, share another story, please. Yeah, one
Oh,
more.
well,
Go ahead.
so we had one. I mean, I have funny stories. He demolished a Mickey Mouse doll one time, like on a search, because he was frustrated there was no bad guys in the house. But we had one. It was a double murder suspect on a SWAT warrant, and the whole thing is he killed both his neighbors. He was very mentally ill. He had no reason, no provocation to kill him, and ended up taking a gun off one of them. The bodies were in the front yard for like a week because everybody thought they were Halloween decorations. This was actually 6 weeks after the 1 October shooting. And so I get there. I was a sergeant. Loki was Loki was getting a little older. So generally I would take the rear containment. If someone ran out, I'd send them um, because I was a sergeant. So if I was on the front, how we do it, SWAT would take the door, we'd send the dog in, I'd call him back, he'd, clear the house, and then we would leapfrog through the house. But if I was tied to the team like that as a sergeant, I couldn't leave and do something if there was something else I had to go to as a supervisor, I couldn't. And well, when the other dog was newer and less experienced, it was a very new dog. And when they briefed out the violence of this, I'm like, okay, I have to use Loki. We start piecing apart the house, get upstairs, end up hanging an explosive breach on a back door that was shut, and Loki cleared the rest of the house, breached the door. I end up sending Loki in, and he doesn't come out, and I don't hear anything. I don't hear a commotion, no screaming. And Loki, we'll just say, was always very enthusiastic when he was biting somebody. So I never, and all the people he bought never heard, didn't hear screaming, or at least stuff getting knocked over. And I remember the team leader's like, "Hey, what's he doing?" I'm like, probably biting somebody. I mean, we thought the suspect had, probably, taken his own life because that happens. And make our way down the hallway, and so Loki's on top of the guy biting him. The guy who had wrapped him up. I had tried to release him from the hallway. Loki did release, and he just tightened down on him. What we didn't know is the guy was waiting for us and had a gun in each hand. He had a BB gun that he always carried on him, and a real gun that he'd taken off one of the victims. And so what we think happened is Loki comes in the room. He goes to shoot Loki. Loki bites that arm. He wraps him up and then ends up rolling on top of him. But we didn't see it. I didn't see a gun when I go to get Loki off the bite. As I'm pulling him up, well, another SWAT guy was there, kind of grabbed Loki, goes to hand him to me. I take a knee, I grab Loki, and the gun comes up to me. And so I suck Loki in. I reach up and grab the gun, and I yell, "Gun, gun, gun." And as I do that, and I'm trying to control the gun so we can take it away from him, but he slips away and spins, and one of the SWAT guys pretty much over my head, and another one both shooting ended up killing him. But that's the value of a police dog. Huh? Like he saved. If it wasn't for him, it would have been SWAT guys going in that room. So and so there's a lot of value to it. But like I said, there's so many stories where he saved me.
No,
he was a good boy.
no, definitely. And like I said, I've worked with canines over my career, and they're just invaluable. They truly are, and they're priceless. And we
Yeah.
had two of them, and we had one on both key. We had two keys. We call them keys on shifts on midnight shift. They were both on
Mhm.
midnight shift, and every once in a while they rotate down to days. So, but just knowing that one was floating around on midnights when I primarily work patrol, it was just it it was just a good feeling. And if there was a neighboring town that needed one and they were calling for one, I never hesitated to go ahead,
Yeah.
go back those guys up. So, but they're great. They're absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. No, he was such a good dog. And he probably made me laugh every night. Like we were searching a building one time, and it was like a wall of mirrors. It was like a Sears or something. And he kept running into the mirrors at a full run. And I'm like, dude, at least some point you got to avoid the other dog running at you. Like I get the mirrors look like another room, but like I had a full run. Just I'm like, dude, like because he was just wild. We used to call him the purple minion. If you ever seen the Minions movies, I had little
Oh yeah.
kids. The
Yeah, me
purple ones
too.
were all crazy. Like that was always him. So we all called him the purple minion because he just everything was at 100.
I can't remember if it was on your podcast that I watched or if it was in the book. Didn't he used to, if you left the divider open, he would eat your lunch or he would take your energy
Yeah.
drinks, which is the
Yes.
last thing a Malawad needs?
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was I would come back and like, he wouldn't destroy the car or anything like that, but if my lunch was up there, he would take it. And there was and so I always tried, but it wouldn't latch all the way sometimes. I remember one time I came back and I had like a full rock star punched, which was what I used to get through graveyard with. And it's all spilled in the back because he bit it open and he licked it all up. And I'm like, oh, I'm in for a heck of a night because
Right?
he did not need all of that for sure.
Oh my God. I mean, talk about a hair missile then at that point. I
Yeah.
mean, he had to
Yeah.
be, doing circles like nonstop in that back seat of your vehicle for sure.
Honestly, it was hard to tell because he always was. Like he went from 101 to 105, but yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is too funny. Like I said,
Yeah.
mine, she's just she has on and off. There's no in between. She's either sleeping or she's just running amok in our yard
Yeah.
or through the house, and she always wants to play or get into something. She's not destructive, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God she's not destructive. But she's play with me, and she wants to go in the yard. If a bird flies over our yard, she's looking at the bird flying over our. I mean, it's just yeah, she's insane, but she's good because I'll tell you what, if there's anybody around the house, she definitely lets us know. That's for sure. So,
Yeah. Well, even in
yeah,
retirement, Loki, I always had to worry. Like he would never hurt the kids. He loved the kids, but I always had to worry about like a FedEx guy or a kid
um,
jumping into our backyard to get a ball.
yeah,
Like
I'm
you don't
sure,
care. So
I'm sure. But yeah, I want to get into that night of October 1st, 2017, and you call it the before and after that divided your
mhm.
life. Can you take us back to that night and what you were doing before that call even came out?
I was working that night. I was a sergeant. I was in canine, and we were training dogs. So we had a bunch of new dogs going through a new dog school. I was probably like 7 or 8 minutes away, from the strip at least. And in canine, even in Vegas, I mean, like I said, at that point, I think we had 21 handlers, but we covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we had day shift, we had a split, two squads at night. So I mean, you may only have 4 or 5 dogs at any time, and for us, jurisdiction that has 3 million people in it, plus 48 million people that visit a year, we always felt understaffed, even though we were staffed more than most canine sections. And we I'm training dogs. I used to keep my radio on scan so I could hear all 9 channels at once. And everybody else except one other handler were dressed out. So they just had a black t-shirt and BDUs. I stayed in uniform. I had one other handler in uniform in case something came out we had to go to. And on scan, I'm listening to all the channels at once because I'm listening for a code red. I'm listening for a foot pursuit. I mean, the fun stuff. That's what we do in
Yeah.
camping, right? And I hear automatic gunfire. Like that's how I learned of the call over the radio, which unmistakable, right? So I looked down on my radio because it'd tell me what channel it was coming across. It said Convention Center Area Command, which was the strip. I remember thinking, because there's nothing in Convention Center Area Command where you're going to hear that, like, other than an active shooter. I remember looking at my team. I'm like, there's an active shooter on the strip. Everybody else dress out, get geared up here. I don't want you not showing up without your gear, all that. Get dressed out, meet us there. Dave, let's go. So Dave and I jump in our K9 trucks. We had Tahoes, and we just start driving. First, we just start driving to the strip, trying to figure out what's even happening. Um, and then they say at the Route 91 festival. And here's the thing: is we tend to look at these big events and we're like, oh yeah, it was somebody at the Mandalay Bay shooting into the crowd. But in the chaos of any active shooter, and I talked about that in my book and in my class, but it doesn't matter the size of the event. It always starts with chaos, and so you have 22,000 people at a concert under gunfire. They're all calling 911. You're getting mixed reports. It's coming from Gate 6 at the festival. It's coming from here. When Jason Aldean ran off stage, his mic was open. So now you hear gunfire coming from the speakers at the front of the stage.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and so there was that confusion of where it was even coming from. And so we get to, as I'm driving there, I call the SWAT commander again. I was worked with our SWAT team all the time and hundreds of missions with them. And I call the SWAT commander. It was his second week as the SWAT commander. I think this was one of his first major call outs. I'm like, hey, active shooter, Route 91 across from Mandalay Bay, getting everyone there. He's like, okay. He hangs up and just does the all call via text because they had a
Yeah.
communicator. They could send out information. He just said, get going, and more information to come, basically. So as we were arriving at the Mandalay Bay, and I learned how fast those Tahoes go. There's a governor at 120. I generally drive like an old man because you have an unsecured dog in the car, and you take
Yeah,
a hard
right.
turn, he hits the wall, and he pouts the rest of the ship. Um, so we were just hustling to get there, and the suspect's still shooting from them. Now I was a good distance, enough distance away that we identified. It took several minutes to identify where the shooting was coming from. So as we're arriving, they're saying it's coming from the Mandalay Bay, and an officer was just shot in the arm right in front of the Mandalay Bay by the main entrance when he arrived at the festival, thinking that's where it was from. It was also his first day on the streets out of the academy, first day of field training, and he was shot in the arm on this. So you don't get to choose the moment; the moment
No,
chooses you, right?
sir. Mhm.
And so we decide, Dave and I are talking, we have our own K9 radio, and we're like, hey, let's go in through the Shark Reef. So you have the Mandalay Bay casino floor and hotel tower, a couple 100,000 square feet of convention space, and then the Shark Reef. And so we arrive at the Shark Reef. I called for, hey, more people meet us at the Shark Reef. I get 3 detectives in polos and 511s, outer vest and pistols. I have 1 K9 handler who has SWAT gear, myself who has SWAT gear. I was the only one on the team with a rifle. So I grabbed my rifle. I'm the sergeant, but at the same time, I have a rifle and plates. Like, my spot, I had to be at the front of the team because we also had to make the right tactical decisions from what we were headed into. Gave one of the detectives, the big one, a ballistic shield. At the time, only SWAT and K9 had ballistic shields. Like, hey, hold the hard part towards the bullets,
Right.
because he still curses me out when he sees me because he's like, that's the heaviest thing I had to carry. Because then we had to beat feet all the way through the Shark Reef and convention space, all the way to the casino floor. Fitness is important for this job, right?
Now, I wanted to ask you about that. That's one of the things I definitely wanted to ask you. As you're going through the convention center and you're going through that hotel, especially in the casino, everybody at that moment had to be a threat in your mind. People running around. Did you know that there was one or maybe even multiple? So anybody that's running by you guys as you're trying to get upstairs or wherever you were trying to go, you had to perceive them as a threat, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we didn't know what we were walking into. We knew somebody was shooting from the casino. What complicated it is you had, okay, 22,000 people at a concert venue. You had 413 people shot, um, over 850 injuries, right? And 58 people killed that night. A lot of people from that concert fled. They self-evacuated into surrounding businesses, bleeding, crying, screaming. So what do those businesses do? They call in active shooters at where they're at, because it's not like they didn't call in dispatch and say, hey, there's an active shooter down the street. It's like there's an active shooter at Caesars, at the airport, at New York, at MGM. So what we're hearing on the radio is active shooter. They're ghost calls now, and now we know that. It's something I teach in my classes. Now we know that that's something that can happen, even depending on the. I mean, imagine how many people are at a mall or a school and that same thing happens. it was mirrored on the UNLV shooting that I was the incident commander of right before I retired. Was the same thing. You have other surrounding businesses calling stuff in. I had the experience. I said, "Hey, we're not going to send anybody to that. I think that's this. I don't have the people to pull away from the main mission right now. When we do, I'll send them there," which is also a very scary decision to make, even as incident commander. Like,
Right.
hope I'm right about that one. But that's what we hear, the chaos and the carnage and so many people dead on the radio. We hear those other calls coming in. So we absolutely thought Las Vegas was under a coordinated attack.
So did you
So
have to send people to to those other venues, to those other, casinos to see what was going on? Obviously, so
yeah,
you had to
so
pull resources too.
yeah, so initially, it took a bit for a command post to get set up. There was one, we had one set up at the concert, but it was in the middle of the concert grounds. So, that incident commander was taking cover. And I know he tells that story. That's his story to tell, not mine. But we have the captain showed up to set up a command post and was absolutely sending strike teams to other properties on the strip to make sure it was secure. What do we actually have? But at the time, it's like these are all coming in. We're thinking, okay, like it was 2017. In my head, it's like ISIS is attacking Las Vegas. That's what I thought.
Mm.
And so but we get to the casino floor, and this is what was surreal, because I had told my team, hey, because on the way there, I was crisis rehearsing. What am I going to experience? It's one way to cut through the chaos. It's one way to clear up decision making space in the fog of war. If I'm driving to this and I know, at least have an idea of what to expect. You can never be 100%, but at least I have an idea of what to expect. When I get there, that's one less thing, one less decision I made. So I remember thinking, okay, we're going to just push people past us. I'm going to tell my team to clear hands and keep them pushing, keep them going where we know it's safe. Expect gunfire if we're going to have gunfire, and be ready for it. But you have so many people. But I'll tell you, we arrive on the casino floor and they build those things so you don't know what's going outside. It was surreal that people were still gambling and drinking. They were reacting to us in tactical gear moving through the casino floor. And
True.
when we arrived, so I had three detectives, I had one K9 guy, and myself. I knew, I've been in Mandalay Bay 100 times at this point, growing up and all of that. And there's a security podium with a security officer. They're not armed. There's armed security in there now. Like everywhere has changed on the strip because of this incident. But I remember grabbing a security guard and grabbing a detective. I'm like, go to the surveillance room and get me intel. I need to see what's going on. Because when we hit this casino floor, the suspect stopped shooting. It was right
Mhm.
around that time. So I remember, like, go get me intel. I need to know, like, what you can get on camera. And I remember that guy's partner goes, cool, I'll go with them. And I did a quick count. That left me with two detectives, a canine handler, and myself to go up to the room. And I remember telling him, no, he has to go alone, because I need that. I talk a lot about, like, the difficult emotions on these types of incidents, and what you're going to encounter. And yeah, was I afraid? Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm like, oh, I felt no fear, and I knew I had a job to do. Although once upon a time, that's what I did. I thought, that was what I was expected to say. Now, obviously, with age and experience and time to reflect, there was fear on board. But really, my biggest emotion was I didn't want to make the wrong call as a leader. I was the only sergeant at that point with my team. And, there was one other sergeant on the 32nd floor when we did this, that he was doing evacuations down the hallway. But that we didn't have, command. We didn't have lieutenants and captains and a chief giving us direction on what to do. Um, and I can tell you, I remember I didn't want to make the wrong decision and get someone killed. I didn't, and I'm not going to say I didn't mind, but sending people into danger in this situation, it's what we have to do. But I didn't want to be the guy. Like, why did he send him alone? Why didn't he send someone with him? He didn't know if the suspect was down on the casino floor. He'd stopped shooting. He could be down there. I remember, I can tell you right where I was at on the casino floor, where I'm like, oh, I hope that guy doesn't die. Um, but we have to make these decisions, in that. So there was a lot of anxiety for me internally. Like, I don't want to make the wrong call. So I take the rest of my team. He goes to surveillance. Take the rest of my team. We go to the elevators and to go up to this 32nd floor. I met with another team. I have a vice sergeant and a couple vice detectives and patrol officers. Just like, we're just throwing teams together to try and respond to this. Because the reality is, I'd love to have a full SWAT team on active shooters, but who's generally going to be the ones that handle these? It's going to be your patrol guys, K9 guys, maybe detectives. If you have the hybrid patrol SWAT guys, then you might have a couple of those if they're working. But in reality, it's patrol officers that need to be ready for this. And so we get to the elevators. Now we're told, I was told on the radio that, hey, security's in a shootout on the 29th floor. We have a suspect in the room on the 32nd floor. So I remember telling, and we had a couple officers already up by the elevators with eyes on the suspect's door. So I remember telling the other team, go up, like, support them. We're going to go to the 29th floor, see if the suspect's out and was in a shooting with security. Turned out to be misinformation. You have so many moving parts because we go to the 29th floor, start clearing it out. Don't encounter anyone. It's just that you have a security officer that was shot initially when this popped off, and so that just by the time it got to their dispatch to our dispatch to us, it's just that game of telephone, right? So we make our way up to the 32nd floor, and I'm going up the stairwell trying to communicate. It's you couldn't get on the radio because there was 51 officers that were working overtime at the event, several sergeants and a lieutenant, and then you had everybody was responding to it. Everybody's on the radio. I have somebody shot here. I have a dead body here, and I remember getting frustrated, like, and I said this. I stressed about this when my body camera got released because I remember saying, I know people are dying. Get off the effing radio. And I was like, people are going to think I was a callous a-hole. But in reality, I mean, it was frustration because I'm concerned about I'm concerned about a blue on blue, right? You have so many moving parts, chaos. I'm going to step out in the hallway. They're going to see my rifle. I'm dressed a little different than our patrol officers and all my gear. Like, I'm afraid that I was going to catch around. Thank goodness it didn't happen. And so we get to the 32nd floor, end up opening the door, and that's where I run into SWAT officer Levi Hancock. And so he had gone to the 32nd floor, had a team of patrol officers. He got there and put together a team of who he had. He saw the suspect's room at the end of the 32nd floor, or the hallway on the 32nd floor. And he's like, let's go down to the 31st floor. We'll go across the hallway. And there was a fire escape stairwell that we could give us access. So if you picture, you have the Mandalay Bay in the middle, you have elevators, like an elevator, bank, and then you have three wings going off the Mandalay Bay, each about 450 yards, and normal rooms on the side, and at the end, double doors. And the suspect, the main room, he had 135, which was the double doors at the end of the hallway. Directly to the right, he also had room 134. And then directly to the left, when facing his door, was a fire escape stairwell. So we go up the stairwell, that's where we encounter the suspect had taken an L bracket and screwed that door shut. So he wanted to funnel us down that hallway. But Levi was a breacher. Like, thank goodness for the small thing, mechanical and explosive, taught it around the country. Like, he's just, so he had a pry bar. We popped off the L bracket, opened the door into the hallway. Immediately to our left, you have the double doors. The suspect, the room he was in, he had shot through the door, however many times. So you had bullet holes through the door, frags on the ground, like, debris. Directly across from us was a room service cart in front of room 134, and there were wires coming from the room service cart into the secondary room. And we're going to leave out, like, that's really weird. Like, that is weird. And so we have to make a decision, right? I had a bomb dog in my car. I could have gone down and grabbed. That would take 30 minutes probably to traverse all of that again. If I was hustling, that means I'm hustling to get it. And then even you run a bomb dog on a suspected device, you don't know. I mean, it could be an incendiary device that my dog wasn't trained on, right, at the time. And so that didn't work. You could call a bomb squad. How long would that take? Would they even operate in a hallway that a door that had been shot through so many times? And all the while we need to clear this room so we can get medical to people on the field. Now, little did I know, Clark County Fire Department was violating their own policies going forward, saving lives, but they couldn't do it at the level we needed to do it until we cleared this room out, right? So we make the decision that we're just going to go breach this door and hope that this doesn't blow up. Levi had his breach bag, so we hung an explosive breach on the door. Dave shielded the door. Levi hung the breaches, and I covered the secondary door with my rifle. When I got close to the cart, I could see there was a camera taped to a plate on the cart facing back to us. So I just reached down, like, turned my head, like, please don't explode, and flipped the camera over so it wasn't facing us. Step back into the landing, call down to the command post that was just getting set up, and hey, we're going to breach this door. We'll let you know. So we breach the door, have a successful breach. Door opens. We were expecting to be met with gunfire, and we weren't. Step out into the hallway, joined with one other SWAT officer and another team of officers. I cover the secondary door when the first part of the group makes entry. I then have somebody cover that, and I go in to the room, and we clear out the room. We find the suspect on the ground with an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had a small revolver next to him. Um, Clear out the room. We do a secondary explosive breach because he had broken out windows with small sledges to shoot into the crowd in each room. The crosswind blew one of the doors shut. So we did a breach and locked him in the main room. So we did an explosive breach on that door. Go in, clear that room out, find more guns. The cart with the wires was cameras. He had set up screens to see our response. He was trying to port next to the door. He had a drill bit, like a big hole bit. He had a scoped AR-10 rifle on the ground next to where he was trying to port, which he would have had a shot completely down the hallway had he finished that. He didn't finish it. I believe he was interrupted by the security officer who was checking on an unrelated issue on the same wing of the same floor. And it's when he started shooting through the door at the very onset of this. So we go through we try and send intel out. We pull out the suspect's ID from his wallet, send a picture down. We to the command post. I find checks belonging to the suspect's girlfriend. We send that down to the command post. I grab my team, and we have all these ghost calls coming in, and I'm like, hey, we're going to go down and go to the next one. So we make our way down to the bottom of the Mandalay Bay to go to the next call. This is the investigators are going to take over this one. By the time we got down to the floor, I realized officers were showing up at these other calls and realizing what they were. It was just, people panicked, injured people showing up at other places, and sorted it out. So I walked across the street. They'd set up a command post at South Central Area Command. I walked into the command post. I gave my body camera to the investigative captain that showed up. Said, hey, here's the inside of the room. Walk into the command post, drop my gear in the corner, and tell John, who was the incident commander, who's now the chief of police in Maui, what do you need? He's like, and he was doing a great job, but what a big event to be the incident commander of. And he's like, I need a strike team at every property on the strip. Okay. And that's what I did for the next 12 hours. I sat down in the command post, writing down, okay, make sure we have teams there, make sure working with the DOC to make sure we had enough people, because so many cops showed up wanting to go. And I was very proud of, our cops, because so many people, we had to send people home. Go try and sleep, because we're going to need you the next operational period. And yeah, and the other thing that I think that is often missed is first responders acted bravely. So many of them did exactly what they needed to do. But so many lives were saved by just normal civilians that were at this concert, using bike racks as stretchers under fire, getting injured people out. And I think sometimes that's missed. We focused on the first responders, which again, I was one, and proud to be part of that community. But you had off-duty doctors and nurses, and military and cops from other jurisdictions, and they were all stepping up to save lives. And I mean,
Man. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to ask you too, just hearing this story, is talk about an adrenaline dump. And usually we get tunnel vision when that happens. How did you get yourself off the X? And what I mean by that is how did you deal with that stress and all that chaos to maybe take that breath and to keep moving forward? And most importantly, how did you keep the guys around you and your teammates calm in the
yeah.
chaos? Because I know that that's hard as well. And so if you get excited, everybody else is going to get excited. And obviously, I was never on anything like you experienced. But we had hot calls, where I was from. And if every once in a while I catch myself getting a little elevated, on the radio, and I would just have to tell myself, just take a breath, because if you're going to be calm, everybody else is going to be calm. But in a situation like that, no one could prepare for anything like that. How did you, number one, stay calm? Number two, how did you keep the people around you calm? Explain that one.
Well, the way this progressed is, the decision was already made that we were going up there to engage the suspect. The mere nature of the Mandalay Bay is it's so big. It wasn't like there's a shooting happening right here in front of me and I need to immediately respond. And I did have some time. I was an experienced canine handler, experienced supervisor at this time. I'd been a sergeant for a long time. But definitely was stressed. I definitely felt it. Controlling my breathing, trying to breathe and do some breath work, and trying to bring myself down as much as possible. But even for me, like a lot of people experience that fine motor loss, when your heart rate
Hmm.
gets above a certain amount. I didn't experience that, but I had the cool guy vertical foregrip on my rifle, and my hand kept going numb. And I kept having to shake it out. And I was like, "Am I having a stroke right now?" Well, no, I was all my stress was in this
Yeah.
hand, and I was gripping it so tight that no blood was getting in there. So it definitely had an impact on me. And I think that it's a crux of what I teach now is here's some breathwork techniques, some crisis rehearsal, some ways that you can make those decisions, breaking the big thing up into small things. So, no, I'm not right now going to breach a door to stop a mass shooter. Right now, I'm clearing this hallway to make my way there. Right now, we're on the hallway. Right now, we're going to clear this. Now, we're going to hang the breach. Now, we're going to breach the door. So, breaking it up into small, consumable bits is something that's always worked for me because, anything in life worth doing, you just keep that forward momentum and keep just going. Just keep going. Um, as far as my team, first off, the mere fact that the guys that I had show up, and I know them now, of course, but I didn't know, like, I knew their faces, like the detectives, I knew my canine guy. Um, and both him and I were, like I said, SWAT dog handlers, been on hundreds of missions, been on all the hot calls in canine. So there is some stress inoculation, but nothing can prepare you for something like this, really. Um, but the ultimate filter was they showed up ready to go. Like, we have a large agency, cops showing up, but the ones that were meant to be there were there. There was one point we're clearing that 29th floor, getting up there, and I remember telling my team, "You guys are doing fucking phenomenal. Beers are on me later." And that was
That's cool.
all intentional. Like I made that. I'm trying because I know if I'm feeling this through what I've been through, I need to bring them down too. And it's like I'm reminded of there was a story about Joe Montana in the Super Bowl right before a drive to win it, and he goes into the huddle, and all his players are like expecting him to say something leader and bring everyone. He goes, "Hey guys, did you see John Candy's in the stands right now?" And I remember one of the guys on his team were, "Oh, I knew we were going to win right now, right then," because he's so calm that oh, we're going to win. And so I tried to replicate that. Like, what would I need? I want to know. Hey, beers are on me later. We did all go for beers like a week later, but
Right.
beers are on me later. You guys are doing phenomenal. So because you said chaos is contagious, so is calm. Calm is contagious too.
Hmm.
And you look at other events around the country, you look at something like a Uvalde and how terrible that was. Well, you leaders, doesn't matter the experience of the people on the call, a leader can bring calmness and incite action. And a leader
Hmm.
can also stop action. I mean, you had 376 cops on Uvalde that didn't make entry into a room where there's a gunman killing kids. And am I going to sit here and say 376 cops are all cowards? I mean, did they do the right thing? Absolutely not. But that being said, leadership, you have power as a leader. And you don't, when I remember, I'm saying leader, not supervisor. You don't have to be, you don't
Right.
have to have stripes or bars to impact the people around you. You just have to step
Agreed.
up and, hey, you know what? We're going to go do this. We've done this before. On the inside, I'm like, I've never done this before.
Right.
I hope we get beers later, but
Right.
externally, being calm for your people is always calm, and it doesn't have to be policing, and it doesn't have to be the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. It really, a single person barricade is going to bring chaos. A big business decision that is going to affect your company for years to come brings chaos, and so what I always tell people: if you don't have it, fake it, and if you fake it for long enough, you're gonna be calm.
Right. Looking back, is there a decision that you would have made differently that night?
Oh, absolutely. Um, so one of the big things, and uh, stress, fear, anxiety, it doesn't matter if you're the most senior operator or a new cop, it impacts your decision making. I remember we were getting geared up, and I had Loki in the car, and Dave's like, "You want to grab your dog?" I said, "No, Dave, we're going to kill this guy, not going to bite him." And because all the training I had done, when you think about active shooters, is I didn't want 100 pounds of hate attached to me because then I can't shoot, can't put rounds accurately on target. There's going to be thousands of people running, screaming, hands up. When I get in there, it's going to be pure chaos. Not the best application for a dog. Until we breach a door and I'm looking into a room I'd love to make entry with, and I would have loved to have my dog. And, I look back, thank God he had taken his own life. It was a little bit of a letdown because we wanted to help him along with that at that point. But not having that tool, I love you, buddy. Go get him. I'm right behind you. It wouldn't have been slow and methodical where I sit at the door and send him in, but having him as a tip of the spear would have been an amazing tool to have. because of my training, and anxiety and fear inhibits critical thinking. That was a huge mistake that I made. So yeah, I mean, I would love to say I wouldn't do anything different, and no, absolutely I would have. That's a big reason in my class I talk about that and other mistakes that I made, why I made them, and how you cannot make the same mistake. How you can train differently rather than cookie cutter training. And okay, here's the active shooter. It's at a school because we got a school to train in, and you're going to go through and you have sim rounds, and you're going to kill the bad guy and finish clearing it out. Presenting yourself with opportunities under stress to critically think and practice that skill and practice that muscle is so valuable to training cops these days. Because here's the thing, 2 October isn't going to look like 1 October. You, at the end of the day, I can buy a drone on Amazon that can deliver a couple pound payload for like $400. So I'm not saying that's what's next, but look at even the recent, you had we've had a couple, I think in Michigan, you had an LDS church and then a recent Jewish synagogue where they used a vehicle as a weapon. One, he drove a car into the outside of the church, which pulled people out, and then he shot him from the exterior. You had a Catholic school where he was shooting in windows
Hmm.
from the exterior. And then you had this recent one where he drove a truck inside the church, the Jewish synagogue, where there were 120 school kids in a back room. So they're although they're similar and we've trained since Columbine a certain kind of way, we also have to train for critical thinking. Huge mistake I made. Don't want people to make the same mistake. Never going to be perfect. I've never been on a tactical operation where we didn't have things to improve on or talk about after. But yeah, I mean, I I think that if I were I would be a fraud if I stood in front of people and say, no, I didn't make any mistakes, or no, I wasn't scared, or not. I mean, we
Right.
have to be real if we're going to learn from it at the end of the day.
In the hours and even the days after that incident on October 1st, how did you even begin to process it? How did you decompress?
Like, the reality is I didn't. Like, it took me years to even start to process through. I would say, in the weeks and months after, I was just pretty numb. Like, you know, I remember I was beating myself up. I was sitting on the couch listening to the radio. I was beating myself up because how much faster would I have been? Why did I go to the 29th floor first? I didn't remember. I was listening to the radio traffic at 2 in the morning on my couch that had been leaked on YouTube. And then I heard myself on the radio. I heard them say, oh, there's a, security's in a shootout on the 29th floor. And I'm like, oh, that's why I did it. I remember now. Okay, I would do that again if I didn't want a suspect behind us. If he got out, I'm not going to just go to the room and let this person, do that down on the 29th floor. It just turned out to be misinformation. But other than like beating myself up for things I really didn't process through. I get more emotional now, 8 years later, talking about it than I did a month after talking about it. And, it's, that is a huge mistake that I made. Like 6 weeks later, that shooting I was involved in, that was 6 weeks after this, was the one with Loki that I told you about.
Right, right.
And so you're just stacking it. And even then, I had to go talk to the department therapist after, or not department, is our contracted at the time. You have him now. And I was, I went in there and lied through my teeth. Like, I have a strong faith, lie. A strong support system at home, lie at the time. Um, I've really come to grips with everything that happened with the suspect. He made that ultimate decision to pull a gun on us, and we had to do what we had to do and, save our own lives. And I'm feeling really good about it. Whatever. I said what I needed to say because I went back to work the next day. So it took years before, I think um, I started therapy in 2020 because I had it in a very short period of time, right? Before this, my dad passed away of cancer young. 1 October shooting, that shooting afterwards, my brother took his own life in 2020, went through a divorce, and all these things in a really short period of time. And I started therapy because it just all got to be too much. But even that, I mean, that's why I'm a proponent of the day you put a gun and badge on is the day you should start getting mental health help, because it gives you tools that you wouldn't have had you not gone. And what do you lose, an hour a month? And you don't even have to go in anymore. It's all, you can do so much on telehealth. And so like, you don't even have to wear pants to go to therapy anymore.
No, that's true. And you are the first person I've ever heard say that, like day one, minute one. And that is a phenomenal idea. You describe the Oaks framework. If you could do that for us
Yeah.
too. Did that help
So
you?
yeah, this was something I came up with after. It's something I did in the moment and I've done like unofficially, but I worked with some police psychologists. I worked with police researchers to come up with a practical tool for people to to regulate their emotions under stress. So if you notice in my class and in my book, I talk about ways to mitigate the physiological effects of these emotions, right? We are all, but regardless of your belief system, we're either evolved or created to have certain emotions to aid in survival, right? Fear is a survival instinct, right? Um, anxiety and freezing. Everyone knows fight or flight, but fight or flight or freeze is really what it is. All of these things we have, and it's part of us. And so what I in my book, what I've talked about in my class is, okay, here's the way to mitigate the physiological effects of these emotions, right? Whether, okay, it's fear, there's breath work, whether it's box breathing, frenetic breathing, certain ways you can train um, to bring your heart rate down. Same thing goes for anxiety. Same thing goes for tactical paralysis. I thought there are creative ways to get through and with people much smarter than me, mind you, to mitigate the physiological effects of these emotions because it's natural. Again, it's evolutionary, or you're created, or a mix of both, regardless of your belief system. What oaks is for the mental regulation. It's how to regulate your emotions in the moment. And what it stands for, I chose an oak tree. When I teach police officers, when I come out to a department, I bring little patches that say oaks on it that they can throw on their vest, because there's studies that show physiological action of touching something can, like tapping something, can help ground you in the moment and realize that you do have the power to make decisions and over your actions in those moments, regardless of what you're feeling. But we're breaking it down. You have oaks, and what oaks, the O in oaks, and we love as cops. That's why it's OD green and black. We love patches. We love that. But we also love acronyms, right? And the O is for own it. That means that's all the work you put in beforehand. Meaning, as cops, as men, it's still a very male dominated profession. We're not very good at even identifying the emotions we're feeling in the moment. I feel good or bad. Like my blood is up or it's not. But that's where all the work, owning the work that you have put into yourself to even in this moment, I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling anxiety, I'm feeling this. It's like the roots of an oak tree, people, you don't see it. It's what grounds a tree, it's what, makes it strong. The next, so I'm feeling this way, and I understand because I put in the work, I'm owning that emotion. Then I'm going to acknowledge it and release it. I'm acknowledging it because I also have basic understanding that feeling fear in this moment does not make me weak. It doesn't mean I'm not supposed to be a cop. It means I'm human, right? And we live in a reality where even though we're created to, I'm out hunting and gathering and I see a bear, I have this emotional response and I react. I run, I climb a tree, whatever. But what we ask our first responders to do, whether you're a cop, whether you're a firefighter, is to go towards that bear. And so in that moment, I'm going to acknowledge the emotion that I've identified because I put in the work, and I'm going to let go of the shame that is associated with that emotion, and I'm going to release it because it's no longer serving me in this moment, right? Like, meaning I'm feeling this. It's normal to feel this. It doesn't mean I'm a bad cop. I'm letting the shame go. We talk about stigma all the time in getting mental health. There's definitely a stigma for feeling fear as a cop, right? They put a gun and a badge on your gun, a badge on your chest, gun on your hip. You're no longer supposed to feel these emotions, but that's just not the reality of it. And so I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to release it because it's not serving me in this moment. And, again, I like to bring it back to, it's easy to remember, like an oak tree releases its leaves in the fall because it's not serving it anything in that moment, right? Um, the K is keep going. And that's what I talked about earlier. And what I did that night, what I tried to do over the course of my career is anything we do, we break it up into small pieces and we keep moving forward. And it's like, anything is a collection of small actions. Running a marathon is just a bunch of small steps. Small steps you're never going to see me do. I'd rather lift weights than try and run 26 miles or whatever. But so rather than think I have to go up to this room and engage the suspect, to put my gear on, I have to assemble my team. I have to get in this door. I need to clear my way there. I need to make sure the people running towards me, their hands are clear. I need to make my way to the elevators. I need to make my way up. And all of these small things are more consumable for your brain under stress to do. How do you know what you need to do? Because at the end of the day, we all need to train. We all have to be experts in our craft, whether you're a SWAT guy, whether you're a patrol guy, canine, detective, whatever it is, you have to have the foundation and be an expert in what you're doing. And if you're a cop that's not training for every part of this job, then you're doing yourself a disservice and possibly endangering yourself beyond what you need to do. And so, it is just breaking up to small steps and keep moving forward. Smooth is fast, right? Like if constant forward momentum gets the job done, not sprinting through, leaning into the chaos, stressing everybody out else around you. And then last is the S is a self-regulation. Um, Meaning you have zero control over how something makes you feel. Anxiety, fear, any of that, you do not control how that makes you feel in the moment. You have 100% control over how you act, regardless of what you're feeling. And that space in between those, something that makes you feel a kind of way and so how you react, is your opportunity to apply the rest of the Oaks framework. It's your opportunity to regulate your emotions and act a certain kind of way. And that space sometimes is very small. You walk up on a car stop, gun comes out the window, you have to react, right? And that you rely on your training in that reaction time. Sometimes that space is very long. You're standing outside a door. Do I breach this door? Do I go in? Do I engage the suspect? And you can apply these methods to regulate yourself emotionally and do what you need to do in the moment. Whatever got you there in the first place, because your duty, honor, your job, your role, you can continue, you can keep going through because you have control over your actions 100% of the time. And you're not letting
No,
fear or anxiety make those decisions for you.
no, that's true. And the other thing that you talked about too was the filing cabinet. All the incidents that you were in over your career, the passing of your brother, the passing of your father, these, the UNLV shooting, the active shooter, and everything else. Explain the file cabinet. Did it ever get full
Oh,
for you?
yeah. And so what that's in regards to is you keep experiencing things as a cop and even as a human. See, this is where, when I get up and tell my story, I always make sure to say, like, listen, trauma, bad experiences are relative. Your worst day is still your worst day. My worst day is still my worst day. So you don't have to go through the things that I've gone through. Obviously, I've been through a lot to experience what I'm talking about. And what happens is we just end up shoving down all these hard emotions. The problem with that is it works. Like, it works temporarily. Like, in this moment, because I don't want to think about this hard thing, I feel better now in this moment. For me, I just kept shoving things into that filing cabinet, shoving things away, close the drawer. I don't even want to see it. I don't want to deal with it. And I think everybody experiences this a little different. But for me, I kept shoving things away. And ultimately, I was shoving away the good things too. Like, I was just shoving away all the emotions, because the more I reached and grabbed for something, the more I shoved in that filing cabinet to not feel, the the more I shoved in there, and I found myself just going through life, just not even really experiencing it. Now I go to work and I turn on because it was what is expected of me. So nobody knew that I was dealing with those things. But ultimately, for some people, that filing cabinet bursts open, and for me, it was more. I just realized that I was no longer experiencing life around me. I was walking through life like a zombie, and it took years of therapy and even doing EMDR and self-care and self-reflection. But I'll tell you, like, here's the reality of it. I'm still in this day 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I still have bad days. And I've been in therapy since 2020. I've been, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month, but I'm still going. I'm still trying to, work on myself and get myself to a good spot. But all that to be said, it's still just like, it is still just a grind. And it's why I wish that day one I started. So I
Right.
had those tools and I built that resilience to be able to do this job and, and, retire and live a long, fruitful life and experience joy and experience good things. But yeah, I mean, it's dangerous because, like I said at the very beginning of this, is it works for a time until it doesn't.
What did you do for self care?
So for a very long time, I did jujitsu, would train, be around people that aren't cops, MMA and stuff like that. I'll tell you, like, for me, it's nature. It's trying to get out and just be in nature. I'm not even saying hiking, but just being out in nature, taking the kids fishing. But I'll tell you, and listen, we're going to be real on this podcast. That is generally the first thing that goes. And I realize that, oh shit, I'm slipping back into it because, right now I'm running a business. I'm traveling all the time. I'm teaching and I'm doing podcasts and, all of these things that I'll go like 2 weeks and realize I've just kind of been working. Um, and now with my wife, I ended up getting remarried, and we like to sit and watch. I love MMA, so I like to watch MMA and try and relax. And but yeah, I'll tell you, it's something that I still struggle with this to this day. Much like pushing down the bad emotions, feels it works is when you live your life for everybody else. Taking kids to practice and doing stuff for the family, doing stuff at the business. And it's like, it feels, well, I'm being altruistic. I'm being a good dad, but I'm not taking any time for myself. So I'm present, but I'm not present, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, when I moved down here to Texas, I took my kids out to lunch separately, and I actually apologized to them.
Mm,
And I sat down, and I own every good thing, and especially every bad thing in my life. I own it. It is on me. Okay. And I remember sitting down and I took them to lunch. And this was, again, hard to do, but I sat across from them and I just said, I owe you an apology. And they both looked at me like, huh? What? What are you talking about? And it was exactly that. I said, you know what? I said, I wasn't there for you growing up. And they're like, what are you talking about? You were always there for it. You came to all of our games, all of our events. I go, no, 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 no. I was there physically. I said, but how many times, when I come home when you guys are little and, they want to jump on your lap and show you what they
mm,
drew in their schoolwork. And I was just thinking about the case that I was just on, or the call that I was just on, or the child death that I was just on. And I'm thinking about that. And all they wanted was my love and my time and my
mm,
attention. So yeah, I would have them on my lap and I would be engaged with them. But mentally, I wasn't there with them. I was far from them. And same thing with my wife. And that's where, I think I'll probably take that guilt with me probably for the rest of my life. I mean, my wife is extremely resilient. So are the kids. The kids, they swear up and down that they didn't know the difference, but I did. And I just felt like part of my healing was I needed to own it. And I needed to pull them aside and just say, hey, you know what? I could have been a better dad. And you know what? And they just said, Dad, we love you. You're always there for us. We couldn't really tell, but you know how it is. We,
mm.
we we know, and and that's something that I'll probably live with forever. So,
Yeah. I mean, that is what this job can do to you. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I mean, based on what the conversations we've had both on this podcast and offline, is your wife has helped pull you out of it, and you're lucky to have that. And remember,
mhm.
there are a lot of police
Guys that
officers
don't
that don't, and they
know.
just keep going down that path. So, and gals too. And so,
Mhm.
all that to be said, um, you having that realization and being honest with yourself, that's the step in the right direction. What's why you're in a better place now than if had you stayed, had you not moved down to Texas, and had you not been now using your experience through this
Mhm.
podcast to help other
Mhm.
people, and maybe other people will experience the same thing you did.
Yeah, and that's the sole reason why I'm doing it. And having guests like yourself on is just being able to push our knowledge forward to help other people. What would you say to an officer or a first responder that's out there that's struggling and that they may want to go seek help or go talk to somebody, but they're afraid to do it? What would you say to them?
So I'm going to take this question. I'm going to actually take it in a little different direction. So I'm going to apologize in
Please do.
advance. We have this right now. Wellness and mental health has been monetized, right? You have companies and classes. And I mean, listen, I go around and teach. Um, and I've taken classes that were 3-day classes on mental health and wellness, especially when I was the captain over the Wellness Bureau. And you do 2.5 hours or 2.5 days where they're talking about the problem and statistics. And when they get down to how to actually fix it, it's like, well, if you need help, reach out. Here's the thing. It's been my experience that the people that need help and are told to reach out, the people that are going to reach out are going to do it anyway. We as cops, if we're going to wait for our executive staff or leadership or some company to come in and create some whiz bang program that's going to fix our wellness, or some app that's going to fix our wellness, we're going to be waiting a long time. Where I get on my soapbox is, okay, reaching out, that's a great message. I can't think of, for me, when I was in the middle of it, but at work, I was the guy. I'm not going to see a poster in the break room that says, if you're struggling, reach out, and go, oh, I'm going to reach out and pick up the phone and call it. It's great messaging. It's great to have the awareness. Where we need to, as an industry, in all first responders, is get better at reaching in. mean, listen, I mean, I know you now. We've talked a bunch of times, but let's say we're on the same squad, and I just hate you. I would still take a bullet for you out on the streets
Yep.
because that's what we do as cops. I would never ask you, how's everything going at home? How are you doing? How are you, like, I've noticed that you're off because we're also cops and we talk to people 100 times a day. We know when somebody's off. We damn well know when a peer is off. But, I talk a lot about courage and I talk about a lot about doing the scary things in my classes and in my book. But taking that, and we can be a force multiplier as cops ourselves. And when you know somebody's struggling, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing all right. Okay, but how are you really doing? Like, let's have a real
Hmm.
conversation. Or giving someone permission to feel like, hey, I've been doing this. I was on this really hard call the other day. It's actually really messed me up. Have you ever experienced that? Oh, yes, I have. And now you're having that conversation and getting them to open up. Or how are you sleeping? Like, I haven't been
That's
sleeping.
a
Oh
big
no,
one.
yeah, because it's an open-ended question.
That's a big one.
And you know what? I haven't been because sleep's often the first thing that goes. So, I'm I'm struggling. I'm not sleeping well. Tell me more about that. Let's have a conversation with the ultimate goal of I'm trying to get this person to get help. It's what happened to me. A coworker who's my wife now, but was like, "Hey, I can tell you're off. Like you're off. Like let's have a conversation about it." Like I'm like, "Oh no, I'm fine. No, you're not. Let's have a conversation. I'm gonna be real. You definitely, I've seen a change in you over the last several years, and you're not doing okay." And we were just coworkers and friends at that point.
Mhm.
So that ultimately changing that culture of okay, yeah, if you're struggling, reach out. That's a great message, but we can reach in. We can fix this problem on our own because we're all trained to know when somebody's off. We just need to be able to get over that. That's an awkward conversation to have. What if I'm wrong? Am I accusing this person of being suicidal? Maybe it may be. And guess what? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And if I'm right, I could save a life.
Yeah.
So if you're
Yeah.
struggling to reach out and you're already on the edge, reach out, do it. But I'm more guys like you that have been through it, guys like me. There's so many cops that have been through these things. Keep your eyes peeled for the people around you. And it also helps you because you're not going to have to live with the guilt if something bad happens. If somebody takes their own life and you saw the signs and didn't do
Mhm.
anything about it.
Yeah, great point. And I used to do that too when I was at work, midnight shift. Sometimes you'd have a little bit more time than you did on a regular day shift. And I remember one conversation that I had with a peer, and I just walked into the break room to grab a cup of coffee, and this peer of mine was just sitting there eating lunch. And I asked him, I just said, "Hey, how are things?" And wouldn't you know it, I mean, eyes welled up and just found out that they're going through a horrible divorce. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just that simple question. And you know what? I had 20 things I had to do, but you know what? Pull up a chair, sit down, and sometimes you don't have to say a word. Just sit there. They don't want advice. Just sit there and listen and
Care
just
not
listen.
cure. Care not
You know,
cure. That's it.
and just listen to sometimes they just want a sounding board, just someone to listen to. And then I have a group of buddies that are still on the job and that are recently retired, about 4 of us. And you know what? We all have our baggage and we call it out. And that's the one thing that I love about these guys is we'll be like, "Hey man, how you doing?" "Yeah, I'm good." And you're like, "All right, cut the nonsense.
Yeah.
What's going on?" "No, man, I'm good. I'm good." And then after a little while, you start peeling the layers back. And that's the other thing that I want to get through too is don't be afraid to call out your friends. And again, you don't have to be a first responder or military to be able to do this. You see something's off, again, share one of your own experiences. That loosens the mood. That gets people to talk to you. Just be like, "Hey man, what's going on? I'm going through some stuff too." And some of the best conversations that I've ever had with a lot of the people that I'm friends with is just that. Just call them out on it. Not in a condescending way or an
Yeah.
accusatory. That's not what I'm saying. But when you're really close with somebody, you can call them out, and then you'll kind of see their head kind of go down, and you're like, "Hey, man, it's cool. What's going on?" And then before you know it, you just kind of start talking through it, and before you know it, you're both kind of maybe like choked up and you're sharing stories and then you actually feel better afterwards. But no, thank you for sharing that. So Josh, thank you for everything that you did and the lessons learned. And please, everybody, please get this book. It's an amazing book. Like I said, you do not have to be a first responder, military. That book is good for anybody. So where can people find that book?
Yeah. So the book is called The Courage to Live. It's on Amazon. You have to find The Courage to Live. Put my name in there. You'll for sure get to it. It's available on like a Kindle and a hard copy. Um, and yeah, I'm really proud. I'm really proud of the work that went into that with through a real publisher and all that. It was a labor of love to get it done. But I'm proud of what I put out there. And then, I'm generally traveling around the country. If you go to my website, it's Bitsko Consulting. It's my last name, Bitsko consulting.com. Honestly, if you Google my name, Josh Bitsko, you're gonna get to it. Um, and I think the next one at the end of April, I'm in Illinois in Springfield at the Illinois Chiefs Association.
Yep.
And then, I'm kind of all over the country throughout the year, a lot of these different conferences. But the easiest place, if you want to see me speak, you can reach out through my website. Hell, my cell phone's on my website. Like I'm not hard to get a hold of. You can leave a message on there, and I'll let you know if I'm going to be close to you. And if you really want to attend, I'll get you there.
Fantastic. And what's the name of your podcast and where can you
It,
find it?
it's the same thing. It's the Courage to Live. It's on all podcast platforms. Um, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all of that. And I think I'm posting my 135th episodes. I do a mix. I do long form, like, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour once a week. And then the rest of the days, I just do short tidbits. I think sometimes it's hard to listen to a whole podcast. You listen to your commute. So I have 4 or 5 minute ones, just little thoughts and little, things that I talk about, things that I teach about. Um, Everything from, law enforcement specific stories about Loki, or even just like, okay, I've been running a business for 3 years and this is what I've learned on how to be successful.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It is a fantastic podcast. I'll put a link to his book, his website, and his podcast down in the description. So if you like what you heard today, please like and subscribe to Josh's podcast channel, my podcast channel. And as always, thanks again, Josh, for your time and for coming on.
Of course, it was a pleasure being here today, and it was great speaking with you.
Thank you, sir.